Shabbat Shalom, happy Hanukkah. Good to have you all here tonight with us in the sanctuary and online. I hope you love the holiday of Hanukkah as much as I do. I hope it's clear it's not my favorite holiday. I like Passover more, but that's because I like the food there too. But I have to tell you, when I was young, I understood that the gifts that we got were imitative of the traditions of another religious observance in our country, but I still liked getting gifts. And I understood that decorations in our home were there to sort of placate us because we didn't have strings of lights outside our house like our neighbors did, but still I liked the decorations. Parenthetically speaking, when I was younger, there wasn't yet the concept of the overly ostentatious Hanukkah sweater. Maybe there's another word for that. You can say it shorter. Maybe you know that word. I don't know. But say it again. The ugly Hanukkah sweater. Okay. And I'm not too fond of those. But no offense to anybody who might be wearing a Hanukkah sweater. And I really like Hanukkah foods, though. I have to tell you, in the last 3 days, I've consumed more chocolate and more oil and more fried foods than I ever thought I could. And I'd like to think that my binging was due to the moment in time in which we find ourselves, more than the fact that fat and chocolate are good, right? And they're just fun. And then there's family. Perhaps in our home, we were lucky, we were fortunate, we had a large nuclear family. And my fond memories are that the 7 of us would sit around a table that was just big enough for us, eating our fill of latkes and playing dreidel and having fun together. Of course, all of those things are important for Hanukkah. But there is also the quintessential meaning of Hanukkah. And so I invite us to consider for this evening just what that meaning is, just what that message is. Our modern joyful celebrations, as we had earlier this evening here at the temple, and I hope that you had it where you are watching, began as very solemn occasions, actually, in the history of our people. They were occasions where people could offer gratitude for God's blessings. And that goodness, that offering of gratitude, can sometimes elude us. After all, what better personifies our stereotypical view of they attacked us, we defeated them, let's eat, than holidays like Purim and Hanukkah. But let us also not forget, let us also remember to integrate the lessons of history, because the lessons of history are important, especially when this holy day comes around, because they not only reveal the record of history of Jewish survival over time, but they teach us something about the reality of being Jewish in our world. And this year, at this particular and unique season of Hanukkah, we who support Israel certainly cannot avoid speaking about the aspect of warfare that is also an aspect of this festival. Frankly, since October 7th, some of us can think of nothing else. But let us see that despite the focus on the candles and the miracle of the oil that the early Talmudic authors present to us, the later generations of rabbis of the Talmud didn't want to lose that military or that sense of victory that came from the ancient wars that the Maccabees fought against the Syrian Greeks. They didn't want us to lose that because they thought that even though we had miracles, the military victory was important as well. In fact, in the Talmud, in the book called Soferim, the Tractate of Soferim, they added language to the Hanukkah blessings. We don't do that as a regular practice that is in the same order that they wanted us to do that, but they added words to the Hanukkah blessings that helped us both remember the miraculous and militaristic nature of the origins of the holiday. Now, and rather than being a glorification of war, they offered sort of a comprehensive reminder that any struggle involves aspects of the divine and aspects of the human in a certain kind of partnership. And that's what I wanted to point out to us tonight. And in fact, on page 9 of the supplements that we gave you tonight are words that may look familiar to you. And then I hope that they do, because we do these words. These words are in our prayer book. They are in our Hanukkah liturgy but they're not always said as part of our practice. And so I just want to reintroduce them to us just for a moment. Following the first blessing of the Hanukkah candles, say the rabbis of the book of Soferim, we're supposed to add this language. And I'm just going to offer the first 3 lines. You can follow along in Hebrew and in English. Hanerot halalu anachnu madlikim al hanisim ve'al haniflaot ve'al hateshuot ve'al hamilchamot she'asita lavotenu bayamim hahem bazman hazeh. And translated, again, just those first few lines, these lights we kindle remind us of the miracles and the wonders and the deliverances and the military struggles you performed for our ancestors in those days at this time. Again, now there are 4 aspects to focus on for a few moments: the miracles, the wonders, the deliverances, and the military struggles. All of those are part of our tradition. And the rabbis of the later Talmudic era tell us this because they didn't want us to forget. Now, I have to say that when I was young, my family might have shielded me from the connection of war and Hanukkah. And perhaps today, as we recapture our ancient traditions and we maybe reduce the blue washing of our history, this has been a focus in more recent years. I do recall, as a young person, coloring in cartoon elephants with jolly Maccabees sitting on top. And I kid you not, they were smiling, carrying a sword. And it was supposed to be a nice image, right? But the true engines of war and the true implications of warfare and the 3-year battle that the Maccabees fought, none of that was a focus of any of my religious school teachings, even when I went through Hebrew high school, even through 12th grade. So what do we do with the realization of how our people in those days at this season actually needed to pursue their military objectives for 3 years before it was over? I'm not suggesting that any war should last that long, although we all have had experience with other places in the world where that happens. But what can we bring into our lives to inspire us at this particular holiday season? And I ask that question because, speaking for many with whom I have spoken, we're feeling, many of us, pretty disheartened because of the situation with the war, the rise of anti-Semitism in our nation, and even in our community, and the prospect, frankly, of Antiochus-like dictators and demagogues gaining greater control of our governments in this country. How can we possibly cope with all those things? So I'll tell you tonight what I told a news reporter that I spoke with yesterday. And I said to her that I am motivated by our historic ability and direction from the mitzvot, that is, to bring light and warmth to places and hearts that are desolate and dark or that are facing danger. And as difficult as these times are for us in this country, in Israel, and even our friends and neighbors who live in Palestine, those of us who've been to Israel, and those of us who relate to Palestinians on a one-on-one basis, we have a unique talent for carrying the pain of others, for engaging where we can be useful and helpful, and seeking solutions that may have otherwise been difficult to find. So I invite us all to look inside and to consider how we all can be involved more in the world. How motivated are we to make the world better by the light and warmth that we share? If I turn to the situation in Israel, I try in these days to identify the heroes who exist there. They can be shining examples of how one person can do extraordinary things. In the throes of war, you must know that heroes can be found not only on the battlefield, but also can be discovered in small contributions to the lives of people affected by war. I want to share one heroic vignette with you. Again, let us remember that heroes can be found anywhere. This is a little-known story so far, I guess, about someone named Yusuf al-Zianda. Now, Yusuf is a member of the Bedouin community and a resident of the town or the city of Rahat, which is a recognized Bedouin city in the Negev. Recognized is a technical term, and I can tell you about that later if you like. And Rahat being an Arab Bedouin city, is also often hit by rockets. Because he is Bedouin, I think that's the reason that his story is stuck a little bit in the background these days. Yusuf is a driver of a hired van, and he had been hired to bring 9 people to the Tribe of Nova music festival in that open field near the town of Re'im, at which 260 Israelis were killed in the Hamas slaughter. He relates that on Saturday, October 7th at 6:30 in the morning, when things began to happen there along the Gaza envelope along the border, he got a message indicating that there was a rocket siren and that he needed to return to that area to pick up his passengers. Now, these are his words. He relates this. When I arrived, the scene was already hot. There were gunshots overhead, people running away and screaming. I saw an injured woman running towards me, screaming for help. It was terrible. I never saw anything like it, and I wouldn't wish upon anybody to see it. What was most important was to save lives, and I had to use all my courage. I'm afraid to sleep now, so the images don't come back to me. Now, Yusuf's van normally holds 14 people, but he loaded 30 people into it, and he drove across the fields to the nearest police station at Kibbutz Tze'elim, where the injured were treated. He continues this way. He says, I'm a Bedouin, but I am first of all a human being and a citizen of Israel. I would never differentiate between people. We are all human beings. One of the escaping van's passengers, Amit Hadar, wrote this on their Facebook page that, quote, the only reason we got out of there was Yusuf. Even when the terrorists shot at us from every direction, he didn't drive away and leave us alone. He waited, collected us, and rescued everyone so he could be and we could be on our way. Again, heroes appear in all different kinds of places. Yusuf was motivated to be of service that day, and Yusuf became a hero. Another set of battles that we will face are on our own home front here, the battles against anti-Semitism. 2 recent events come to mind that can begin to signify heroism in our times, or maybe a heroic response to something that we see. This week, the director of the FBI intensified the call for recognizing and addressing the problem of anti-Semitism. He's done it before, and he did it again this past week. Christopher Wray testified before a Senate committee that the upward trend in anti-Semitic incidents leads the FBI to conclude that 60% of all religiously based hate crimes in America are directed against Jews. I truly appreciate his warning Americans to be on guard, yet his voice needs to be amplified and multiplied and agreed with across the nation. And I say that because earlier this week, I heard the voice on the radio of one of the contenders for high office in this nation, claiming that the language about the so-called Great Replacement theory was not anti-Semitic. I was in shock and horror when I heard him say this. Now, this is someone who wants voters' support and funds. This is someone who himself comes from an immigrant background, as do so many of us. But sometimes politicians pander to people who are sympathetic to their views and I dare I say to white extremists. And I think that's what he was doing. And I was completely flabbergasted by this and sickened and motivated to try and find ways against white extremism in this way. And his has not been the only extremist voice that we have heard. Many people jockeying for elective office, along with some of their colleagues already serving in congressional roles, captains of industry, social media influencers like Elon Musk, all aligning themselves with hatred and the bigotry that has infected the people of our country. These influencers simply know what buttons to push to activate hatred already out there. And it is here where we need a hero, or really we need a set of heroes, people from across the political spectrum, to stand up and say no to hate, no to those who have or desire power, and declare that America is closed to diversity, We have to say no to people who want there to be only one viewpoint here in this country. We need America to be open to diversity and equality. We need Wisconsin to be open to diversity and equality. We need Dane County to be open to diversity and equality. We need, in some cases, our very families to be open to diversity and equality. And we need someone to lead them. And so I ask the question, who will be motivated to be that leader? And who has the ear of the people of our country to be that leader, or of our state, or of our county, or of our community? I don't know the answer to that question, but maybe we can find it together. And the third set of battles that I would mention is against demagogues and autocrats who seek power by fiat and who seek to demolish democracy to the extent that people will be discouraged to participate in the democratic process. Here, I think, is where each one of us can be a hero. In our state, we have the Wisconsin Interfaith Voter Engagement Campaign, sponsored by the statewide interfaith networks of the Wisconsin Council of Churches and the Wisconsin Faith Voices for Justice. And for transparency's sake, this latter organization is led by my wife, Rabbi Bonnie Margulis. But this nonprofit network builds increased understanding and strengthens ties among different faith communities. It increases engagement in the electoral process and results, we hope, in a greater understanding by faith communities of the influential role that they can and are entitled to play in speaking about issues that affect us in the public square. Widespread voter engagement is needed to ensure that elected leaders will pay attention to the needs of all their constituents, especially those who are least often listened to and who have the most at stake in the decisions made by elected officials. And frankly, as we enter the coming year of a major national election and many local elections, it is imperative that we help to encourage citizens to engage with candidates so they can, A, present their needs and desires to candidates, and we hope that candidates will listen, and then so that we all can vote our consciences. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. reminds us of the importance of voter engagement. He wrote many years ago, obviously, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but we will remember the silence of our friends. Let us therefore be motivated to bring forward our voices and not be silenced in the shaping of our society. My friends, we can be connected with the beauty, the taste, and the visual delights of our holiday of Hanukkah, but let us also be motivated by thinking about and emulating those who lead us in ways of good living and good doing so that we can live out the meaning of that human-divine partnership and strive to make our society a better one. Again, these words that we find in the supplement at the conclusion of this Hanerot Halalu prayers, it says that the purpose of our lighting the Chanukiot is to give thanks and praise for God's great name, for miracles, for wonders, and deliverances. Let our giving thanks be our ways of giving back to the society around us and the people around us, those who need our light and those who need our joy. Happy Hanukkah and Shabbat Shalom.